It's a free class. A sales free class? Sales free, what does that mean? Sales free? That I'm not gonna sell anything? You don't have to buy anything.
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
yeah, we're live, so welcome everybody. We'll give folks a little bit of time to join the live stream, but we are here with my realtor, Rich Shiro, and my buddy, also a fellow investor, one of my best friends, Quentin Bolton from Virginia. We went to college together. So I wanted to invite both of these gentlemen onto the live stream. This is my first time using this particular tool where where I can actually have guests on my live stream. And with all of the craziness going on with the coronavirus and people being locked down, I thought it might be a perfect time to hold some sessions or lessons on investing in real estate, no more than an hour, where we can talk for 45 minutes about different topics. And this first topic is going to be getting started investing in real estate. And then we'll progressively get more advanced in future live streams. But it'll just be free real estate investing advice. So welcome to everybody so far that is on the live stream. Drop us a comment so we can see who's in here. Looks like we got a few people in here, but you know what? Let me have my guests introduce themselves. This is nothing formal because I just invited them onto the live stream today. A lot of you guys have seen Rich chime in on live streams in the comments, but we have the ability to have Rich on video now. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Mr. Shiro?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't come for my beautiful face here. Uh, my name is Rich Shiro. I am vice president of a company called Realty Ohio here in Columbus. And I've been in the real estate business since 2005. I obviously got in perfect timing, just in time for a crash. I've gone through some hard times, gone through some good times, and just in time for a crash. I've been doing my best to get through this, get my clients through this, and it's really tough. But one thing I can promise is it will get better.
So Quentin, thanks, Rich. And I wanted to also introduce my buddy Quentin. Quentin and I go way back. Went to university, Hampton University together. So Quentin is also an investor. So I'll let you.
yeah. So yeah, as Will said, we went to Hampton University together, and I'm kind of what you would call like a beginning investor. I've had rental properties before, had various experiences, good and bad, with it. Um, and my wife is a real estate agent right now, and we have some property down in North Carolina. So I like to take as many opportunities as I can to glean as much as I can from Will and the folks that he knows that have experience in investing. So I mean, that's why I'm here today. I'm like a sponge. I'm ready to learn. I probably got a whole bunch of questions, so feel free to get rid of my square up here on screen if I'm asking too many.
Now, I figure you could help us also, sift through some of the questions that come in through the comments, um, and then present them as well. But I think you got into investing in property before I did, though. I think you had an investment. When did you have your first investment property?
It was right before my son was born, so that was 2003
Yeah, so you
when I
got.
first, yeah, and it was a small place, um, and actually not that great of a section of Richmond, Virginia, but everything that needed to be done to fix it up, me and my dad, we did. It was painting and putting in carpet and doing the landscaping. I mean, that part worked out great.
Mhm.
It was, it honestly, it was dealing with the different types of renters, um, and a lot of it fell on me, not really vetting folks properly, and just kind of really fumbling my way through all of that, which which made that experience not as great. Although I knew that even though I had some bad situations with that property, I knew it was the way to go. I just knew it was going to be a learning process. So I had some pain points with that one.
Cool. So I appreciate you both for being on with me. So welcome everybody. For those folks that have just signed in, please hit the thumbs up for us as we get into this conversation, because what we're trying to do is basically share knowledge on investing in real estate while everybody's kind of locked in to try to stay in the house because of the coronavirus situation. A lot of you guys probably seen that D Nice. There's like a DJ on Instagram that's had like a couple 100,000 people watching him DJ live on Instagram. And I thought, man, that's a great idea. You got like all these people in the house so they can tune into him to party with him. I thought, why not, with all these people in the house, why not host a free, he's doing a free party. Why not host a free class and just teach people about investing in real estate? And I'm going to try to do this every night if I can, if not every night, every other night, to just share knowledge and get people excited about the possibilities when investing in real estate. So with that being said, that's why we're doing this free class, this free knowledge. And thank you guys for, spending some time with us. So I think we got about, how many people we got in here? About 75 to 100 people in here. I have to log in and use 100 people are in here right now. That's what it looks like. All right, so we got 100 folks in here. Make sure you hit the thumbs up for us. But let's go ahead and get started. Since this is the first class, it's not going to be anything super formal. When we get into the questions, when you guys ask questions about investing in real estate, I might be able to bring up some things on my screen. Rich might be able to share some things on his screen related to your questions. But what I wanted to do is give everybody some background information on how we got into real estate and then sort of how we interconnect. So me personally, I'll kind of start telling my story a little bit about how I started investing in real estate. I would be very interested to hear, Quentin, I'd like to hear your story on what drove you to get into real estate. And then Rich, if you could tell your story about how you became a real estate agent, and then we can tie it together on how you and I started working together, and I can give more details about some of my first investments that we did together, Rich. So how I got involved and started investing in real estate was sort of by accident, because I was going through a divorce in like 2009. So I bought a condo in 2007. And I was staying in my condo. I still had my house that I bought when I was married. And I wanted to sell the condo after my divorce from 2007 to 2010. I had the condo for 3 years. When I went to go sell it, the value went from 140,000 to about 90,000 when I went to sell it. And so that was like a 50 grand drop. And I didn't want to take that loss selling my condo. So I started thinking, wow, if people are willing to sell their houses for such a loss in such a short period of time, then maybe I should start looking at buying up their property. Those people in my zip code that wanted to sell their homes and stuff. So I sort of got in there. I got in there by accident, just looking at the opportunity. The timing was right as far as me having a little bit of money to invest that I had saved up over a lot of years. And I'll let Rich and Quentin kind of introduce themselves and how they kind of got started investing in real estate. But when I first went out to look at properties to buy, the first realtor that I reached out, no, actually, I wouldn't say the first realtor, but on this particular website, there was a listing I was looking at, and the realtor that listed that property was Rich. And I saw his contact information, and I contacted him and said, hey, I want to see the property. And we'll get into that story after Rich kind of introduces himself. But I basically got into investing in real estate because I saw the opportunity in 2010, and I was kind of studying the market. I knew how much homes cost before I got in. And I knew how much the market had dropped. I knew it was artificially low. So that motivated me to go all in to invest in real estate. So that's kind of how I got involved. but I'll pass the microphone to Quentin to tell kind of what your thought patterns were, because I think a lot of people will relate to what your thought pattern was when you got into investment in real estate, Quentin. So you can kind of talk about that.
My path in real estate wasn't a mistake at all. It's just so I listened to my father, and I at an early, as soon as I graduated, I had bought my own townhouse. So I knew that I was more or less interested in owning, rather than renting. At the time, I mean, I had a like a black and white view of renting as opposed to owning. I
And
thought
that was, well, go ahead.
I thought, all right, if I rent, I'm just throwing money down the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my thought was, and that's actually what I grew up hearing from my parents. Now, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily 100% agree with that all the time, but yeah, that was my thought process. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to own my own townhouse, which I bought, and then I said, all right, as soon as I get enough extra money, I'm going to find something that I can fix up and rent. So that's really how.
What made you want to buy something that you could fix up and rent? Was that something that your parents told you was a good idea, or how did you come to realize that was a good idea?
In the neighborhood where I bought my townhouse, it was a new neighborhood, and there were actually some investors buying the townhouses in that neighborhood. So I thought, if I could do that, maybe not one of these new ones, but something that somebody already lived in, and I could just put a little sweat equity in there and then rent it out. So it was really as simple as that.
Okay. All right. Rich, tell us how you became an agent, and then after you tell us how you kind of got into becoming a real estate agent, I'll seam it together with how you and I kind of did our first few deals together. Sure. Or you can tell that story.
Sure. So back, I mean, it helps to know the history to know the future. So the history that I have is I started out, went to college. I was going to be an industrial arts teacher. That's what I'd wanted to be my entire life. And then I discovered that I wasn't very patient with children, and I really didn't like parents. So I needed to do something else. I was always handy with my hands. I was always good at being able to build things. So I finished off a business degree, then got in business and education combined. That's the perfect combination for human resources. I became a human resource professional. I also graduated early, so I was actually recruiting people older than I was to come to work for the company I did. I did that for quite a while, transferred all over the world, and decided that I wanted to settle down a little bit. So I decided to come back to Ohio. I went to a company. I survived the first buyout. The second buyout, I didn't survive. It was a major public company. So from there, I went to a startup, and it was all human resource consulting, outsourcing human resources. And I built this business background that, quite frankly, was tremendous. And then some people conducted some terrorist acts in 2001, and my business went out of business. I then went back to what I loved doing, and that was building things, fixing things, and I became a general contractor. But there was one problem with that. I was old and I was out of shape. So I was coming home and I couldn't feel from my knees down. And I told my wife, physically, I can't do this. So we wanted to find something that would combine all that background in business and combine it with my construction. And we came up with real estate. So I enrolled in real estate classes, got my agent's license. Ironically, I was in the same classes with the broker that I work for now. He was becoming an agent at the same time I was. That was perfect timing. That was 2005, which was just before the crash. We pivoted quickly. and became one of the largest listing brokers for HUD in the country. We moved thousands of properties for HUD during that time, and I became the manager that managed that process. We went from 4 agents to 40 plus during that time. And Ohio, for those who are not from the state of Ohio, Ohio has 88 counties, and we covered 55 of them. And I would travel around to many weeks, all 55 counties.
So everybody that wants to be an agent, it's not easy work.
No.
Around, because like, people ask me all the time, why don't you just become your own agent? Well, first of all, you got to get a license, you got to study for all of that, and then you got to maintain it once you get it. But then if you really want to do it, like, that's a real gig.
Well, the only reason someone should get their license if they want to be an investor, because I have different rules that I have to play by than what Will does.
I don't have rules.
Yeah, well, he has certain rules that he has to live by, but he doesn't have to live by half the rules that I do.
Don't do that.
So, do you want me to get into the story of how you and I met, or do we want to?
I'll let you tell that story, but let me introduce my brother who joined us on the live stream. So my brother Daniel, instrumental in some of my entrepreneurial endeavors, right-hand man with business. A lot of people know Daniel from my videos on Will Motivation. So welcome, Daniel. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, anything beyond that.
Daniel?
What's good, Q?
What's happening?
Hey, what's up, Rich? Leroy?
Doing well.
Yeah, so great to be here. Of course, happy to see everybody joining the live stream. Friday nights are always fun. Let's get it in. I'm laughing because I'm just rocking these new glasses. And they're reading glasses, but these joints look like Coke bottles.
Look, man, that's why I took mine off. I was blind myself.
It's all good, though. What's up, everybody?
So, yeah, welcome to Daniel. Daniel will be instrumental helping us monitor some questions. So, Dan, if you see any questions that come up while we're talking that you think should be interjected at any point in time, you can feel free to moderate the questions along with Quentin. All right, so you guys know Daniel. Wanted to introduce him, but Rich, why don't you tell folks how we start to engage? Because so for those of you that are just tuning in, we're giving a free live stream class on how to start investing in real estate, and then I'm going to be doing more of these classes where we talk about different questions related to investing in real estate. Progressively more advanced. So this is the first one. So we're just talking about how we got into investing in real estate. And then we'll answer some questions. But I wanted to give you some background on everybody that's here on the call, and then how I personally got involved in investing in real estate. And then we'll talk about how the average person can get started investing in real estate. So Rich is officially my realtor. So the way I met Rich was I actually was looking at, there was a property that I wanted to see, and I reached out to the listing realtor, which was Rich. And Rich, I'll let you tell the rest of the story.
Well, I normally wouldn't recommend reaching out to the listing agent, but I'd say that our partnership worked out pretty well. So most of the time, just to give people a background, most of the time when a listing agent has a property, they're responsible to represent the seller. There's one exception to that, and that is
Will Motivation shows up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, if the listing agent is representing on a HUD property, HUD, the government, represents themselves, and the agent represents the buyer. That's one of the very, very few times that is a good idea. So Will calls me on a Friday, and obviously I've gotten to know Will over the time, and he is one of the most quality people I've ever met in my life, not just in real estate, but across the board.
Somebody hit Rich with a super chat for that.
So when he's on the phone, and this is my one criticism for him, he is not exactly the most impressive person.
Check out this property you got over here. Looks like it's in the hood over here.
That's exactly what it sounded like. So this property we had listed for 6 months. It was the very first HUD property that got assigned to us, and it was just going nowhere. And I had been out to show the property over and over and over again. It was a good property, but there was just so many properties that were on the market.
Yes.
That people weren't buying condos, which is what this was. So he says, "Hey, I want to see this property." It was Friday afternoon at 4:00, and he wanted to see this property that was all the way on the other side of town. It was date night with my wife, which, yes, I do schedule date night with my wife. And he wants me to come out to the worst traffic area in Columbus at 5:00 and show him a property that had been a complete dog.
That was a test. You know that was a test, Rich.
Yeah, it certainly was. So
what is this dude really gonna hustle? Let me call him on Friday.
Right.
I'm on a listing on Wednesday.
So I went out, and I have a rule, and this is for all you aspiring real estate agents. This is a lesson to learn. I use this lesson in every single class that I do with my real estate agents. I'm now a vice president. I manage 42 agents, but I use this example every single time. So anybody who's out there that's aspiring to be a real estate agent, or for that matter, in business period, never, ever pay attention to your first impression, because when Will called, I honestly thought that it was a prank call.
Yeah, man, come show me this property real quick. Looks pretty good.
So
Current yankers.
I drove out all the way to the area where Will invests in, and things got better when he pulled in with a car that cost about as much as my house does. And then when I met him in person, he's a very, very impressive guy in person. I mean, he's dressed down right now, but when he came up to meet me, he was very impressive. First impression was just incredible. We go in, we look at the property. He told me that he was new, and he lucked out that I teach real estate investment. Will had a good basis, but I get into some really advanced stuff when it comes to teaching real estate investment.
You made it real simple too, because my thing was, when I met Rich, I was like, well, I have been shopping agents a little bit. So by the time I met Rich, first of all, he showed me his hustle and how quick he was willing to show me a property, which for me, I felt like that was important, because you're competing with other people that are going to be making offers. So he immediately showed me the property. Then the other thing was different from other agents, which Rich was getting into right now, is that he was teaching me some things about how the process worked that other agents didn't just offer up. Other agents didn't even get into it, and I don't know how comfortable they were with talking about what I was asking, which was, I wanted to know the process. Like I knew I had money to invest, but I wanted to know the process, and I wanted an agent that was confident enough to tell me, all right, this is how it's going to work. And Rich made it real easy for me. It was like, okay, it's a HUD property. Here's the difference between HUD properties and your other properties. Okay, I'm like, okay, well, if I want to buy this, how's it going to work? Because I'm worried that I'm going to be like in a live auction, like on the steps, like you see in some of the TV shows. But he broke it down for me on how, buying a HUD property worked. And go ahead and continue the story.
Yeah, I mean, on that same point, and again, for you aspiring real estate agents that are out there, if you tell people why and you tell them what, they'll make the right decision, because people are smart. A lot of agents think that they need to tell people what to do. That is not what I do. And any good agent that lasts for a long time, they learn that their job is to educate, their job is to provide information, provide advice, and then let the client make the decision and execute that decision. So I walked Will through this property, took him all of about 10 minutes of listening to me drone on, and he says, hey, I want to buy this property. I told him what he needed to do. That was great. Now, unknown to him, I had just shown another couple.
Let's give people a little context. This property was listed for 55 or 58, and we ended up bidding 35 or something like that. But it was a $58,000 listing, And the reason why I was so interested is because I knew when that house sold, when it was new, because it was close to my condo, the one that made me spark my interest in investing. When it was new, it sold for about 135, something like that.
Yep. I mean, it was in the same area where Will's condo, the one that he talks about getting started with, it was in the same area. So little did he know that I had just shown on the east side of Columbus 130 foreclosure properties to a couple that was looking to buy their own home. So I knew where every single foreclosure property was that was close to where this property was. And Will turns to me and he's like, so I presume that cash will work. And I was like, yeah, that works. And he says, well, I'd like to pick up a couple more properties. Do you know where there is any more? Well, of course, I've just shown 130 properties on the east side of Columbus. So I said, yes, I do. When do you want to see them? He says, how about tonight? And guess what? Date night got canceled.
My bad.
So I showed Will 5 properties based upon what he told me, and he bought 4 of them that weekend.
And the reason why I bought 4 of them was because, okay, so I was new to investing, but I couldn't believe how easy the process would be with me working with Rich. And so we saw 5, like Rich said, we saw 5 properties. And the way buying from HUD works, which is HUD is the Housing and Urban Development Department, when FHA loans, when people like default on those loans, eventually HUD gets them and then puts them out on the market for sale. And the way they do it is they work with realtors like Rich and his brokerage to list them, and then buyers can buy them. And eventually, like homeowners usually get the first crack, and then investors down the line, they can bid on the properties. And so the way Rich explained it to me was basically I could bid whatever I want on the properties, and the next day HUD would give a notification on whether or not we won the property. So I was, to me, I was really encouraged by that because Rich didn't make me feel like I had to, if they're asking 58, I had to offer 50. He basically was saying I could offer whatever I want, and if we don't get it and nobody else buys it, we can put in another offer. So I felt super comfortable with that, and we made some pretty low offers on those 4 properties, and we got all of them. So then it was like, okay, I'm out of money now. So now what do I do? And so that's when, the journey of learning how to invest in real estate began, because not only did I have these new properties that I had to rehab and get rented out, but I also had to figure out how to get more money, to be able to buy more real estate. And also I had to leverage those, because I used all of my cash to get those first 4 properties. I had to then leverage those properties to pull money out to buy more property. So I had to learn that whole process. But Rich was that realtor that I was working with as I built out the portfolio. And so I don't know if you have anything else to add to that story.
Well, and learning how to leverage, I remember when we first met, you were like, I want to buy these, I want to buy them with cash. And when I first talked to you about using loans, you really pushed back because it was a bad time. I mean, it was, middle of the recession, and he kind of pushed back on me. And then when I explained to him that you don't have to go into debt up to your eyebrows, you can go into moderate debt and then leverage your money to be able to do more things. Mm-hmm. So many times when people are talking about, well, it's either cash or I'm going to be up to my eyebrows in debt. It's not an either or, And when Will learned that sweet spot, and he did something really, really smart.
I did.
Yeah, you did. Took a lot of these properties out for short payoffs, not taking the cash flow, but getting the properties paid off. And that was smart for him. Now, I could be talking to Daniel, and the strategy would be different for Daniel, because let's say that Daniel needs an extra $600 a month
for the cash flow from the rentals.
Yeah, it's a different strategy for him, where Will has a business that gives him his cash flow that, quite frankly, he uses that cash flow to buy real estate. Where if someone is out there and they're wanting to be able to move out of their job, obviously we have to replace their income first. So just because we're talking about Will's situation and what he did, you should get together with a real estate agent that really, really, really understands real estate investment, which, just to give you an idea, there's 8,500 real estate agents in the city of Columbus or in the greater Columbus area. There are probably 700 that understand real estate investment. And out of those 700, there's probably 10% that would even talk to you, because they're so busy that they don't, they're just not looking for business
from investors.
So, realistically, you would find 70 agents that understand investment to a really deep degree, and then put on top of that rehabilitation of real estate, meaning fixing it up, rehabbing it, then understanding finance. You know, literally in a group of 8,500 agents, you might have 70 agents that are going to meet that criteria. And the only way to find them is to go out and start talking to them.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize enough that you want to interview that agent, talk to them, find out what they've been doing, find out their knowledge, see if you're comfortable with them. I mean, Will and I finish sentences for each other. And quite frankly, it's kind of the same as looking for a husband or wife. I mean, you're really cute, Will, but no thanks. But realistically, as many deals as we've done, I've spent as much time with Will as I spend with my wife. So it really is a marriage, only not in a technical sense. So, but once Will started to accumulate his properties, he said, okay, how can I leverage from there? So he started flipping a property every once in a while. And then he would keep one. And then he'd flip one. And then he'd keep one. And that's how he built them up.
Exactly. And I'll get into my strategy, because a lot of my strategy was preparing for the exact climate we're in right now, with a crisis where I potentially might not get rent payments. So my strategy was to minimize my monthly expenses related to my rental properties. So instead of me keeping all of the probably 40 or 50 properties that I ever had, instead of me keeping them all, when the time was right, I flipped some of them and paid down or paid off mortgages for the remaining 20 or so that I had. But I wanted to get everybody involved in the conversation a little bit. So Daniel, I want you to give us a question that you think would be the barrier to entry for someone thinking about investing in real estate. What questions do you think you would have if you were getting ready to start investing in real estate? What would be your number one question to get started?
I would, well, in terms of barrier to entry, I know a lot of the conversations that I hear and am involved in are around people's perception of, first-time home buying, mm-hmm. and the opportunity there to leverage some of the resources available there for that the government provides, and that banks, the programs in place at banks. And a lot of that is not necessarily heavily shared information. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity for first-time home buyers, and then, the importance of credit when you're getting into real estate, and being in a position to be able to leverage your credit to do that.
I think those are two excellent points. So I think Rich can speak to some of the first-time home buyer programs, but I'll touch on a little bit that I know, and as well as how credit was leveraged. So for me, when I bought my first home to live in, I leveraged first time home buyer program with FH. I got an FHA loan, which means my loan had insurance on it, so it was a little bit more. Like you have to pay like an extra amount per month. I think for me it was like an extra $100 for an FHA loan. But when I got that loan, that meant my down payment was lower than the typical loans that I get as an investor. I can't remember what my exact down payment was, but I want to say it was like 5% or maybe lower than that. And then there was like some sweat equity, something I could do that the program offered that qualified me to get the lower down payment to get the loan to buy the house. So it was not really designed as an investor loan, but it was a first time home owner and buyer, like home buyer loan. And I still have that loan today on my first property over there on Grandland. I still have that same loan. The loan amount is the mortgage is $895 a month plus taxes on top of that. And now I rent it for $1,695. So it's a cash flowing property now that's still on that same loan that I got originally. That had pretty favorable terms. It has an adjustable rate, but the rates have been pretty good, so I kind of left it alone. But so that's what my experience has been, because once I started buying a bunch of investment properties, after I had like 2 or 3 personal loans, they're like, okay, now you're an investor. So now you don't get those super small down and stretch it out for 30 years. Now your stretch is 15 to 20 years, and you got to pay 20% down. So as an investor, so that's what happened with that. As far as credit, as an investor, of course, I had to leverage my credit. My credit score usually is in the 720 to 780 range. But people that are in the 600s get home loans all the time. I'm sure Rich can probably speak to that. But once I started my business with the real estate investing, the thing that's important about the credit was that even though I was putting the properties in my business name, under my business officially, even the loan, everything was under my business name, but I personally had to co-sign for my business with my credit. So basically the bank wanted to have it on paper that if your business has a rough time, then you gotta ante up on the payment. So that I had to have good credit, and I had a good financial standing for the bank to feel comfortable lending my business the money to buy the houses. So Rich, if you want to talk a little bit about the different types of first-time home buyer programs that people should look for, I think that might be helpful.
Sure. So for first-time home buyer, generally speaking, you're going to be looking at a credit score. The better your credit score, the better deal you're going to get. Let's start there. So the first place to start is get your credit in line, get your bills paid off, get settled out on anything. If you speak to a lender that does first-time home buyers, they're used to fixing things. So if you have a couple dings on your credit, don't worry about it. Now, next, people are worried about down payment. So this is going to be for those in the States. If you're not in the United States, this is going to not mean a lot to you. But here in the States, every single state has a housing finance agency. And I'm going to get ready to share my screen here, Will. So
okay.
I know we tried this before. Let's see if we can do it again. Okay, there we go. So this happens to be the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. There's different names throughout the country, but these are the people who are in charge of all the federal grant money. They're in charge of local home buying programs. They're in charge of creating affordable housing, but all of them have programs for first-time home buyers. So
can you read that off? Because it's kind of small.
Yeah, let me blow it up here a little bit. I think I can.
This is really good stuff for people who've never bought a home, because I couldn't tell you this stuff, from memory.
So is this easier to read?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So this housing finance agency, now on top of this, there are other first-time homebuyer programs that are out there. Many employers offer homebuyer assistance programs, which, by the way, Will and I need to talk about setting that up for his company. But I mean, here in Columbus, if you work, for example, for Nationwide Insurance, they have a grant they will give you to go buy a house if you've worked for them for 5 years. Okay. Cardinal. I mean, I could run down a list. The state of Ohio offers a grant. But for everybody out there, I don't care who you are, these programs qualify you. So let's start. And almost every state is going to have something very similar to this. Now, this is obviously something I know. It's Ohio. So I don't know the situation in Texas, for example. But I will almost guarantee you that Texas has a program that matches this. So does Indiana. So does California. So in Ohio, the Your Choice Down Payment Assistance Program, that program will give you, notice I said give you, up to 5% to buy your home. If you're doing an FHA loan, you only need 3.5% down, plus your closing costs, another 1.5 points, 5% down. So in other words, you could theoretically buy the home with no money down. Now, you do have to have good credit and you have to have good income. Okay. But that's what that down payment assistance program is for. And like I said, there's two different programs in Ohio. You can do 2.5% down payment assistance, or you can do 5%. So that's
So what does that mean? Does that mean you got to come up with 2.5% and they help you, or they help you with 2.5%?
They give you 2.5% as part of the loan, or they give you 5%. Now, don't get me wrong; they build it into the interest rate. Mm-hmm. But that is how you can get your down payment money. Everybody's like, I need to gather up all this money for a down payment. I mean, when my parents were buying their homes, they had to put down 25%. They had to, period, the end.
So that's what I'm trying to ask you. What do you see most typical now for first-time home buyers, what they typically have to come to the table with as far as a percentage? What do you mostly see?
Well, right now, I mean, young people are a lot smarter than you and I were, Will. They're saving their money. They're doing a great job. And I'm seeing on average about 10% down from first-time home buyers. But that doesn't mean you have to have 10% down. I'm seeing the Fannie Mae first-time home buyer program only requires 3% down, but you can get the money from the Ohio Housing Finance Agency to pay that 3% down. So literally you come to the table with nothing. Okay. If someone's doing FHA, it's 3.5% down. Well, if you're receiving a 5% grant from, the nickname for this is OFA, or the bond program. If you're receiving 5% from OFA, that covers your 3.5% plus your closing costs. Now, let's take it one step further for all you folks out there that are getting ready to graduate from college, or you just graduated. If I drop down a couple of things here, see this one that says grants for grads. Almost every state has a program like this, but here's the cool part with this. You get 2.5% or 5%, and there's no change in rate. Or in other words, literally, with the down payment assistance program, they build it into the rate. But with the grants for grads, they literally give you money to buy a house, because the states are interested in keeping their college graduates in their state. And even if you're coming from California to Ohio, we want college graduates in our state so that we can grow our economy.
Yeah.
So the state of Ohio offers, it's 2.5% with no strings attached, 5% with a small increase in rate. And that is if you've graduated from college in the last 4 years, I believe. They just changed it. Yeah, you had to have graduated in the last 4 years with an associate's, a bachelor's, master's, PhD. So even an associate's degree will get you a 2.5% grant given to you to go buy a house.
That's crazy. So let me circle back, because a lot of people are probably wondering, okay, first time home buyer, but I want to buy an investment, or maybe I'm a first time investor. So Quentin, I know you have some experience with buying an investment property. So if you could talk a little bit about what process you had to go through to get your first investment property, and share like what was the most difficult thing about getting that first property, when you had to, and that process you went through.
So, well, first, Rich, I want to say, like, going way back, you were talking about this a while before, about how it's important for an investor that's beginning to talk to maybe a number of agents, and try to find an agent that understands investing. I'm glad you said that, because I didn't find the real estate agent that I worked with. She didn't really work with investors, so I ended up learning some lessons that
Marrying your agents and stuff.
Say what? What you say?
You're not supposed to date and marry your real estate agent.
Okay, now, but see, she wasn't an agent then. she wasn't an agent then. Yeah, totally different person. But I learned some lessons the hard way that I feel like had I had an agent that kind of understood investing, I wouldn't have had to learn on my own. So that was a great point. I'm glad you say that. I wanted to say that before. I just didn't want to cut you off. But my process, honestly, I wish there are so many things that I know now that I wish I knew then, because I would have actually employed a strategy. I didn't know a lot about picking out what was a good deal. Frankly, I didn't even understand whether I should rent or try to flip. I didn't know what to do first. So I ended up buying a property and renting. So there was a lot of kind of by the seat of my pants things going on with that property. And I think, honestly, the way I went wrong was, honestly, that I didn't sit down and have that agent that was well versed in the process. That really was it.
Where did you go for the funding for that first property?
I went to one of the local credit unions.
Okay.
And I had a car loan with this credit union. So I had some history with them. I had a small account with them. So again, I just went there. I said, hey, maybe I can get a good rate here. And that process was actually pretty smooth. I had, at the time, I think my credit was 720. And so because I had, a history with them, a car loan, clean credit, good income, that whole process for getting qualified for a loan was pretty easy for me. Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't realize was I was thinking I was going to get an interest rate like my primary residence. It was not the case.
They gave you an investor loan.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
What did you have to come? Was it 10, 15, 20%?
Yeah, I had to come up with 20%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and here again, so that's my biggest question is now wanting to get back into it is how could someone like me who's had just a tiny bit of experience, get back into it, but not having to drop all of my liquid cash into my next project.
I'm gonna address that right up front.
Okay.
Twofold, because I'm gonna give you the realtor benefit that you touched on, and then I'll get into, as a result of that benefit, what I learned. So one of the benefits of having a good realtor, real estate agent, is they are well connected. So to your point, if you had a good agent that was well connected, and you went to that credit union and you said, well, dang, this credit union is asking me for 20%. An experienced realtor with a good network would say, wait, well, based on my experience, you might want to work with this brokerage or with this bank over here because I see what they're doing for other investors. And what I learned was, so Rich did that for me. Rich connected me with some of the banks that he worked with. And then I had my network of contacts that connected me with some other banks. So I had a network of banks that I could go to. And what I learned was that for even if you're an investor, certain banks will allow you to have a primary residence where you can still get that low down payment.
Yeah.
And you can have like 2 other residences under your name where you can get that 30-year term and you can get a lower down payment like your primary residence. But once it gets to like 3, that's usually the cutoff for most of the banks. And they're like, you're an investor now, and now you got to do those 20% loans. But having a good agent that has a good network, that agent could have told you, all right, well, if you don't want to put it on a big down payment, you only have one other house. These other banks can look at that next house as a second home and give you a 30-year mortgage. Because I actually did that. There was a more expensive house that I did not want to put down 20% because the house was like, for me at the time, it was one of the more expensive houses, like 110,000 or something like that. It was Beardsley, Rich, the house that you sold like 4 times.
Yeah.
That house. I didn't want to put down 20% on it. So Rich connected me with a brokerage that got me a 30-year term. So the payment was lower, so I could cash flow it. And then my down payment, I want to say, was lower as well because it was.
We got your down payment from one of your other properties.
Okay, so I leveraged
Oh,
another property. And so that's another thing, a good realtor and a good mortgage broker can break down for you. So we're talking about, for everybody that's on the live stream, thanks for joining us. We're talking about getting started investing in real estate. This is a free class that, I have to thank Rich, Daniel, and Quentin, for helping me present this class. And we just wanted to drop some free knowledge, considering that everybody is kind of at home with not a lot to do, considering the quarantine. And with respect to that, we wanted to offer some free real estate investing advice. So now, one other thing I want to touch on, and then we can start getting into some Q&A, is my advice for someone who wants to get started investing in real estate. And it's sort of a common theme because like Quentin did this, I myself did this. I know Rich is a homeowner as well. But a lot of people ask me, okay, how can I get started investing in real estate? And they don't have any property whatsoever. My best recommendation for people to realistically get started investing in real estate is buy the home that you're going to live in, because that home can then turn out to be an investment in several different ways. It can become an investment because it appreciates in value. So when you go to sell it, when you're ready to move, you could make money off of it when you sell it potentially, or you can hold it when you're ready to move, and then you can turn it into a rental property and rent it out. Or you buy a multi-unit building and you stay in one of the units as the owner, and then you rent out the rooms or rent out the other apartments or units within that building. But you get started in the process by, at a minimum, owning the place that you live in. And so there's other people out there like Grant Cardone that says that you shouldn't own you should like make an investment instead of owning your primary. But I think for the average person, owning the place that you live in is the best way to get started, because then when you're ready to get that next property, and you've been there for 5 to 10 years, you may have some equity, not only from the appreciation of that property over time, but also from you paying down the debt when you pay that mortgage. So then you could tap into that equity in your current house and use that as money to put towards an investment, whether it's the rehab or money for the down payment of that next property, but basically building up that equity. It's almost like when I bought my my first really expensive house, for me it was expensive. It was $419,000 or something like that when I moved into this neighborhood. When I bought that house, I couldn't justify how expensive it was until I started looking at it as a forced savings account. And when I went, Rich helped me sell that house. When I went to go sell it, I got all of my money back because after living there for 2 or 3 years, 2 years I lived there, there was enough equity in it from me paying down the mortgage and the market being strong, that I got all my money back, and I was able to use that to move into the place I am now. And I bought this house at even a further discount because the market was down for new builds at least. So that's my number one recommendation for the average person to get started investing in real estate is own the place that you live in. If you already own the place that you live in, then it's time to start looking for that next real estate investment. So I don't know if any of you guys that are on the call want to add to that before we get into the Q&A.
No, you'd never guess that I've got a lot to say, right? So a couple of things. Number one, and I haven't really even covered this with Will a lot because he does more commercial loans, and that fits him the best. But going back to the 30-year loans, you can get up to 10 properties on 30-year fixed rate loans. But those are a little bit more expensive to get than the commercial loans if you have the cash flow to qualify for them. So let's say that, I mean, if you want to read a good book, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door, and it was written a long time ago, but the thing still applies. It's the guy next door that buys one property every 2 years, and they get up to 10, and then they use the cash flow to pay them off. So if you want to build a small portfolio, that's a great way to do it because it's fixed rate interest. You know exactly what it's going to be, and everything's good. Also, I just happened to notice from the chat, someone mentioned VA loans to purchase a property. Absolutely. If you're eligible for a VA loan, which is someone who's been in the military, that is the best loan that is out there. Will mention buying multi-units. Multi-units, yes. They actually are really expensive versus the cash flow you get from them, at least in Columbus, Ohio, right now. But if you can find a double, triple, or up to 4 units, you can do a regular old FHA or conventional loan, and it's the same almost exactly the same loan as you would have if you bought a single family home. But for those of you who out there that might be in college and you're like, well, I don't have a job. Okay. I don't have the income to qualify. I don't have the down payment. I don't have this. Okay. Well, right now you're talking about all the things you can't do. Let's talk about the things you can do. So let's say that you have a brother, sister, mother, grandmother, someone who has that established credit and has the income to be able to cover the payment. Here's something I've helped someone do before. They're going to college. They're going to be in college for 4 years. There's a program through FHA. Now it's called a kitty condo. Don't get hung up on kitty and don't get hung up on condo. Okay. But you can purchase a home with the student who's going into college as the primary home buyer, and they can borrow the credit of their parent. Now it has to be someone you're either related to or you can establish a long-term relationship. So like I've known Daniel for how long now, Daniel? 10 years, 12 years, something like that?
Sure, easy.
It would be 10 years.
Yeah, Daniel and I can document our relationship, so therefore he can co-sign on my loan, and I'm sure he'd be happy to do it.
Let's do it.
I actually help people do this, and here's the deal that the parents made with the kid. Okay, and this goes for you parents that are on the chat right now. Their kid went to college. They made a deal with the kid. They said, hey, look, you go out and get roommates. Those roommates stay with you. While you're there, you're going to fix up the property. And if you let your roommates tear up the place, it's going to cost you money because here's the deal. When we sell it, I'm going to split with you 50-50 the money we make on this property as a graduation gift. Now think about that. That's 4 years of appreciation on a full asset they buy it as a first-time home buyer because the student is a first-time home buyer. And by the way, I saw something from chat. The definition of a first-time home buyer is any person who has not had a property titled in their name for the last 3 years. So if you owned a property and then you got divorced and you've been divorced for 5 years, you are now a first-time home buyer again. Okay.
Oh, word?
Yeah.
I didn't know that one, Rich.
Yeah. So let's take for example. I mean, I know that your daughter's college age. Will. Okay. So I don't know exactly where she went to college, and we don't want to tell everybody. But you go down, you make her a deal. Hey, we're going to buy a property in your college town, and then you cut her another deal that she gets 2 roommates. Those 2 roommates pay her enough money to make the payment on the property. Okay, that's kind of the way that college rents work. They pay down the value of the property, and you can do improvements to the property as you live there. Small things, painting, it doesn't have to be a major rehab. You can put nice landscaping in. You can make it a nice place to live. And then, like I said, in the particular case of the parents that I helped, they cut a deal with the kid that they would split the profit from the property, even though dad put up all the money for the down payment, which, by the way, that's allowed. Okay. He put up all the money for the down payment. He put up all the credit. He put up all the income, but he trusted his college daughter, in this case, to be able to maintain the property, manage it, if you will. Okay. And that is the single fastest way to build the credit of that kid that's in college. And I say kid, adult that's in college. So you're building their credit. You're giving them equity in the property. You're teaching them responsibility about how to manage real estate. You're teaching them about real estate to begin with. And then you're going to split the profits. Now, I happen to know in this particular case, this was the other part of the deal. If she made summa cum laude or magna cum laude, he's going to give her all the money. Okay. So that's the deal that he made. Now, different people have different ways of doing that, but that's the end result. And like I said, you just have to have a documented relationship. It doesn't have to be a relative. So Daniel could do it for me because we've had a long established relationship. One other thing, someone is getting married, someone is having a kid, someone is doing all these things. FHA actually has a program where you can crowdsource your down payment. Okay. So people, again, I don't have the down payment. Well, I make too much money to qualify for the first-time homebuyer program. You can actually crowdsource, but you have to know how to do it, and you have to get a lender that's qualified to do it. So just as important as a realtor, the lender is important. Someone else in the chat was talking about the difference between 1 and 4 units in conventional and this and that and the other thing. Here's the bottom line. If you're a first-time homebuyer and you're buying a property between 1 and 4 units, first-time homebuyer applies, at least in Ohio. And that's a 30-year fixed-rate loan. And your payment is going to be cheaper than what your rent is going to be, at least in the majority of the country. Okay. One of the things I think is going to come out of this. So right now there's all this lockdown in California. So all these employers had to send all these tech people home and work from home. Where do you think they're going to move? Because they're not going back to work. They're going to stay working from home. So you can work from home anywhere, right, Will?
Yeah. I wish I could be in another country right now, but the borders are closed.
Well, I mean, Will works all the time from South America because he goes down there for business and to chase wild women. Okay.
This guy right here.
Yeah. So when push comes to shove, you can
live stream.
so you can live in San Francisco where the average price of a home is $1.5 million, or you can move to Columbus, Ohio and do the exact same job. Okay. Exact same job.
And we got a nice little new build for you too, right over here.
And it's an awesome deal, right? Just south of where Google and Facebook are here in Columbus, right?
Exactly.
So,
Y'all got Facebook in Columbus?
yeah, we
Amazon doing tech centers too.
Oh, okay.
I got a career for you. You want to come up?
Say what?
I know a great realtor to help you.
Nah,
Hey,
Richmond.
so before it gets too late, let's do some Q&A. So Daniel and Quentin, if you guys want to pick some questions from the chat that you think are good for us to talk about before we shut down the class.
If it's okay, I want to jump back to one of the first questions that was asked.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Mo, what was his name?
Mo E.
Mo E. Yeah, he asked about the effect of the recession on
Good question.
the rental market.
So that's a good one. The effect of the recession on the rental market. So we got the recession that we went through before, like 2008 to 2012-ish. And then we have what looks like an impending recession coming and how that could affect the rental market. So how it affected the rental market before was the prices of housing went down because people didn't want to own their house anymore. They were walking away from their loans and stuff, but they still had to, the job market was still strong. So they still had to have some place to rent. So the rental market was strong in the recession in our market here in Columbus, Ohio. The rental market was strong. So all of the properties that I was buying, I had zero problem renting them out. None of them sit on the market for rent more than 3 weeks, ever. Now, the recession that looks like it's coming, this could be different because if people don't have jobs, it could change. Maybe the rental market is not as strong. Maybe instead of renting a place to a typical family of 4 or something like that, a husband, wife, and 2 kids, maybe you're renting out a place to 4 or 5 people that are just roommates because they're trying to minimize rent based on the job market. So I would be careful and keep an eye on the job market and unemployment rate wherever you're looking to invest. And that's probably what's going to, that unemployment rate, the job market, as well as the growth of that particular city or the decline of that particular city, that's what's probably going to affect your rental market. But Rich, you might have something to add to that.
Yeah. I don't really compare it to 2008, 2009 because it's totally different. We were way overbuilt in 2008, 2009, where now, at least in Columbus, Ohio, we are way, 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 way underbuilt. In addition to that, all these people are refinancing their properties at 3%. So there's not going to be a lot of new inflow into the market. So the prices are going to stay stable as far as the rental market goes. If I was buying a rental property today with the inability to do evictions through the courts and those kind of things, yeah, I might think about it. Yeah. But those are going to last for about 60 days. Okay, that's going to be temporary. In addition to that, the banks, the lenders, the credit card companies, everybody learned their lesson from 2008. And they're making arrangements with people. So anybody out there that are having a difficult time, reach out to your credit people, make arrangements with them. And the law that just got signed in, if you arrange for forbearance on your loans, they cannot report you as delinquent. It's illegal. Okay. So everybody out there, pay attention. Yeah. Talk to the people that you owe money to. And there's certain requirements that they have to meet.
Yeah.
But if you don't talk to them, they can roast you. Okay. It's important that you talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay. On top of that, last time I checked, people prefer to live inside. So they're either going to rent or they're going to buy. Right now, there's not enough. The thing that I compare this market more closely to is 2001, when the terrorist attacks took place. Our economy got smacked. And then what most people forget is the terrorist attacks really kind of, excuse my language, but it pissed everybody off. Okay. From there, though, the thing that scared people was not the terrorist attacks, but it was the unknown of those anthrax attacks. For everybody on this call, you're old enough to remember that. It's very similar to this. It's that unknown. It's the unforeseeable. Well, if you go back in history, the H1N1, those kind of things, those had very, very little impact on the market. Now, the Airbnbs right now are just getting creamed.
Yeah.
Because no one's traveling, no one's staying anywhere. So, yes, there are certain segments of the market. On top of that, if I were to ask Will about the area that he invests in, and I don't know if you want me to put that out there, Will, but his area has one profile. To be dead honest with you, I can cross one street, being Broad Street in Columbus. I can cross one street and the rental market is totally different. And quite frankly, I can cross one county line and the market is totally different. I can cross over a neighborhood I live in Delaware, Ohio, which is on the north end of Columbus. Delaware, Ohio, and where Will invests are not even remotely the same, not even close. And Will and I live 20 miles apart. Okay. So when people talk about the real estate market, to me, I say, okay, where? Are we talking about downtown Columbus? Are we talking about Pickerington, which is a suburb of Columbus? Are we talking about Dublin, which is an affluent suburb of Columbus? Or are we talking around campus? Right now, rental housing around campus is not the place that you want to have rental property because no one's in school. Okay.
Yeah, they're getting hit hard.
But any other time, that's the biggest cash flow. Now it's the highest maintenance, but it's the biggest cash flow type of property that you could own in Columbus. But right now it got smacked. So the rental market is going to be just as diverse as the people who live in the homes. Okay. People who lose their jobs that used to live in A class, luxury apartments are going to move to B class, but they will get a job quickly. Mm-hmm. People on the lower end of the spectrum, there was a massive expansion of rental assistance that was in this $2 trillion bill. And that's good. Will it hit everybody? No, unfortunately it won't. And that's something I advocate for is that that lower income housing is a pet project of mine. The people who, of course, that are going to get squeezed are the ones in the middle because the prices are going to get driven up by the luxury folks coming down. The people who are getting new jobs, and there will be new jobs that come out of this, they're going to be moving up. And the people who are living in the middle are the ones that are going to get the price increases. So, Will, for what it's worth, your portfolio is perfect right now for the situation. Okay. Because Will doesn't own luxury properties. He owns one step down.
Middle class.
Okay.
That's my target.
Right. Now, he had a chance to buy some luxury multifamily and he chose not to do it. Good choice. Okay. But when I'm talking about luxury, I'm talking in Columbus, Ohio, I'm talking about properties that are over $600,000, which, that's a lot of money here. When I say $600,000 and someone's in California, they're like, what are you living in
right.
a shack,
Let's jump into some other topics and questions. So Quentin, I'll let you pick the next question. It can either be one of your own or it can be something that you see in the comments.
All right, I'm going to pull one from the gallery. Actually, I've seen this question asked a different way by a couple of different people, but we'll go with the way Frederick Galloway put it. And he says, what battery of questions would I need to ask to see if the agent is knowledgeable? And I'm assuming he's talking about investing, knowledgeable there.
Mm-hmm. A knowledgeable real estate agent.
Yeah.
So, Will, we could do a whole class on that, and that actually might be a good idea.
Yeah.
How to choose a lender, how to choose a real estate agent.
You know what?
I'll tell you right now, that's a good class.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
To add to the course type
It's in my
job.
course. It's in
Yeah.
my course.
Okay, there. Oh, look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You start.
So I can give you a good starting point, and I'm going to bust down a myth, but then will all of us let's put together a real actual in-depth class on this, because I've got really strong feelings. Number one, agent has to invest in property themselves to be a good investor. Bull crap. Okay. Now, if they're an investor, that's a plus, but that shouldn't be the only criteria you use. When Will and I started working together, I didn't own any real estate investment property. Have I been any less of an agent to you, Will?
I don't know.
Now, on top of that, I've always held the position that I will never, ever compete with my clients. So it's not like I'm sending Will what I don't want to buy. Okay.
Okay. All right.
You never want to have that conflict of interest. Couple of questions that you can ask them really, really easy. I'm going to give you some secret insiders. Okay. Number one.
Wow. You were ready. I like that.
Yeah, that's actually not mine. That's Will's. Okay. Is that out of your class, Will? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah, that's from my course.
Okay.
So, couple of little trick questions that you can ask. Don't think any worse of people if they don't know the answer for it, but any investor that understands, ask them a simple question. Can you explain hard money lending to me? That's one question. Second question, can you tell me how I can buy a property and fix it up and equivocally end up with very little money left in the property when I'm done? It's a concept called BRRRR. Many people have heard of it. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Repeat. Yeah.
So a normal agent that just does the home up the street, they're not going to be familiar with how to do that. Okay. A good investment realtor will know if someone says, yeah, you need to go get qualified for a 30-year fixed rate. Okay. No, you don't. You need to go get qualified for a 30-year fixed rate loan, for a hard money loan, for a commercial loan like what Will does. You need to get qualified for a rehab loan. Now, some lenders do all but one of those. Okay. So, for example, Will has worked with the lender that I work with that does rehab loans and traditional 30-year fixed rate loans. He also has a separate lender that does conventional, who can also do the traditional 30-year loan. And then hard money lenders, that's a whole different game. Okay. That's typically a very specialized lender. But if the agent can't answer the question for you about those, they don't necessarily understand real estate and investment well. Now, that's just some insight for asking the questions and to see if you want to continue the conversation to the next step. Because if they can't answer those questions, which that's easy stuff, okay? If they can't answer those questions, there's really no sense in, continuing that conversation. The other thing that a good investment realtor will do, yeah, they'll take you out and they'll show you a property, but so like when I met with Will, I kept asking him questions all the time. What are your goals? I don't care what he wants to buy. I care what his goals are. And then we built a plan based upon what his goals are. And like I said, Daniel's plan will be different from Williams or from Will's. Each plan is built around the person's goals. So if your goal is cash flow, great. Here's the plan, the general outline. Now let's customize it to you. If your goal is to build wealth to send your kid to college, that's a totally different plan. And any good investment real estate agent is going to be much more interested in your goals than what you want to buy.
Let's jump into this next. So I appreciate Rich killed it because Rich is a realtor. Rich is my realtor. And you know, you can't get better advice than that for finding a good realtor. The reason why I like working with Rich is the hustle, the speed. Like when I say speed, if you're competing with other investors, then you need to make decisions quickly and you need to see properties quickly. So for me, a gauge of a good realtor is how fast they are to show you a property and give you information about a property and respond to you so that you can make a decision about buying a property. And that requires hustle on their part and speed on their part, knowledge of the market and real estate in general. I call Rich the Oracle. Rich is like, if I ask him any real estate question, he's never said, I don't know. He always has an answer.
There's a lot I don't know.
Experience working with other investors. And
well, on top of that, every brokerage is different. So like I have one person in particular that I work real closely with, but I have 42 agents that I manage. In our particular brokerage, I could pick up the phone and call any one of those 42 agents and they would do it quickly. Let's say that I was on vacation, or let's say that I was taking care of my wife or whatever. Any one of those 42 agents, including my broker. Now, this brings up a good point. Never discount the newer agent if they're backed up by someone like me or like the broker that I work for. Drew is outstanding. If you're backed up by those kind of people, the younger realtor that doesn't necessarily have all the knowledge, they have the availability to do what Will's talking about. Okay.
Speed.
But they have to be backed up. I mean, thank you for the compliment.
By an oracle. They got to be backed up by an oracle.
But make sure they're backed up by someone that has that knowledge. I mean, in my case, I manage all my clients really closely. But I mean, when I get so busy, there's times when I have to pick up the phone and say, hey, Drew, can you go look at this or go show this, or Mark or whoever I happen to call on. I think I've had that happen with you a couple of times, Will, and Will is my largest investor. So obviously I pay really close attention, but I think there's been a couple of times where I've sent folks to show you property when I wasn't available.
Man, you're pretty much, I mean, you've always, maybe a couple of times, but you're really good about quickly showing me a property. So I think that's very important when choosing a realtor. So let's pick another couple of questions, and I'm going to let you guys go because I know Quentin probably has an appointment with that PS4. But there's a question. There was a super chat from King KLD. He said, great class, he lives in Massachusetts. He has perfect credit. He's got 50 grand to invest. He makes just under 100K. What are his options to purchase foreclosed properties? So we'll just make this real quick because I think this should be a pretty straightforward answer to this one. Your options, and so the last question leads into the answer of this question, and that last question was, how do you find a good realtor? And what I'm going to say is, if you have a good realtor, then they can introduce you to sources for foreclosures, and those sources usually consist of, government foreclosures like HUD Home Store, or Home Path, which is what Fannie Mae, I think.
Correct.
Home Path. So Rich put me on the Home Path, and he put me on the HUD Home Store, and then I've had other realtors bring me deals from from banks, where banks have foreclosures and that they're holding, and then they'll present those foreclosures to investors. So that's what I was talking about earlier with local banks. I was actually on a different live stream where local banks are very confident about buying local real estate because they understand the market, they get their appraisal, and they're willing to give you 80% loan to value, right? And if you mess up and they take that property, they have a list of local investors that'll buy the property from them. So those sources, there's a variety of sources. But Rich, what sources did I miss as far as where they can find foreclosed properties?
Well, I mean, you got Fannie, Freddie, that's HomePath, HomeSteps.
HomePath.com, HUDHomestore.com.
HomeSteps.com. You've got auction.com, you've got Hubzu, although I'd rather take an ice pick in my eye than do another deal with Hubzu. There's all kinds of sources out there. The bottom line, if you hook up with a good agent, because, for example, with HUD, you can't buy a property directly from HUD. You have to have an agent because they don't want to be dealing with people that don't understand at least the basics of real estate. Same with Fannie Mae, same with Freddie Mac. Those three that I just named off, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD, that's probably 90% of the foreclosure market. Now, right now, foreclosures are really down, and it's going to go down even further because there's been a moratorium on that. Now, going back to the gentleman, he said he had $50,000. He's in Boston. Now, I just looked up the average home price in Boston, and I am shocked. It is not a lot different. It's a little bit higher than we are here in Columbus, but not a lot.
It was like 220.
226. Good.
I'm the Oracle now.
Yeah. So I thought it would be higher. So, I mean, if you were in New York City, my advice here would be different. So number one, obviously depends on what your individual situation is. I would recommend that first thing you do is get pre-approved with a lender that does investment property and does a loan called a rehab loan. Once you get, and that's generally the same lender, okay? So make sure the lender can do rehab loans. I'm talking a FHA 203K or a home style from Fannie Mae. Those are specific loan products. And then you find a property that you're going to live in. Now, the rule when you're buying a HUD property and you're buying it to live in is you're going to live in the property for 1 year. That's the deal. Okay. Now, let's say that you find a multifamily. You could purchase a multifamily, use the income from the rental unit to build up your income to help qualify you. Generally speaking, at a 6% interest rate, making $100,000, what you can handle in mortgages will be $300,000 and still not have to eat macaroni and cheese. You'll get approved for more. Okay. But interest rates right now are not 6% for an owner occupied. They're down close to 3%, 3.25%, which means realistically you could go to 4 times your income. So someone who's making $100,000 realistically could do a $400,000 mortgage. Now, if you like to go to Vegas every other weekend, you can't afford to do that. But conversely, if you're a homebody and you read books and you don't go out and those kind of things, you can afford more. The $50,000 for a down payment on an owner occupied, or a down payment on a double, or a down payment on up to a 4-family, you can go in with as little up to a 3-family. You could go in with as little as 3.5% down, then it's 10% down for a 4-family. Okay. But talk to lenders that do these kind of loans and specifically do rehab loans, because that's where you can, we can cover this at some other point, but there's market equity, which you don't control. You don't control the market. And then there's forced equity. That is you putting a new kitchen in or something as simple as painting the place or putting in some carpet or adding a deck or a patio or even just putting some mulch around the place. That's forced equity, where you're increasing the value of the property by something that you are doing. And if it's rehab, like putting in a new kitchen, you can actually build the cost of putting that rehab into the loan when you do a rehab loan.
Cool. Hey,
So that's probably more than he wanted to know, but how's that?
there it is. The oracle has spoken. All right, Quentin, Daniel, with respect to everybody's time, you guys want to add anything else or address anything, or I'll leave it up to you guys.
Actually, I just want to thank you, Will and Rich, for doing this. I mean, I actually learned a lot. I was over here typing some notes of my own. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was great. I actually, in the course of Rich talking, I had a couple of my long-standing questions answered. So it was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for joining us. And Quentin is somebody I look up to. Quentin's older than me.
Well, about like 4 months.
He's older than me. So we was at Hampton. We went to college together. Nah, Quentin is one of my best friends, somebody I talk to every day and consult with. He actually led the way with regard to getting started learning and investing in real estate. So I kind of followed in his footsteps eventually some years later. So I definitely am glad you were able to take some time out to join us. D Moss, you wanna add anything? So for those of you guys that don't know, D Measy is my brother, and he's in a lot of my videos, my right-hand man with my entrepreneurship endeavors. So I don't know if you want to add anything to the chat before we bounce.
No, as usual, of course, thanks for having me on the chat. Rich, Will, you guys always a great resource. Quentin, my brother by extension, always great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
Deal with you. But no, I think the resource right now, these are things that you guys have, the period that we're going through in terms of opportunities for investors is something that, you guys have touched on along this journey with your channel. And here we have what's unfolding in front of us, and we get to examine it and use it as a case study, if you will, for a lot of the people who have been anticipating making moves. And so to keep the content alive and then watch the followers of the channel begin to put it to work, watch you put it to work. We had some standing investments leading up to this situation, and people are going to have to watch you navigate through these situations and make real decisions and watch them play out and then do it alongside of you. So it's nice to have the resource, and good to be, as usual, always happy to be a part of it.
Appreciate it, brother. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Rich, I'll let you get the last word before I shut down the live stream.
You're sure you want to give me an open floor, man?
We're gonna do a special oracle. Hey, so, Rich, when you sign in, you got to put the oracle for your name.
So hey, if everybody out there has enjoyed this, number one, if I've seen all kinds of things going through the chat, but I'm not used to watching chat and talking. So if you have specific items that you would like us to cover, let's pop them in the comments section. You're going to leave this up, right, Will?
Yeah, I'll leave this up.
Yeah. So in the comments section, once this live stream is done, in the comments section on the actual video, put your ideas in there that you would like to hear about. I've seen everything from 1031 exchange to all kinds of really, really good real estate content that we could do. But put it in the chats, not the chat that's going on right now, but the chat or the comments on the YouTube. Number two, I'm more than happy to do this really anytime, Will. The one thing that I'll ask as the payment, if you will, from the folks who are here, grab the like button, beat on that thing until it's dead. Okay. Because the more people we can get into these things, the more that we can educate people. And this is one of my pillars of what I do. My goal in life is to have 1,000 people that I teach to do exactly what Will has done. And now my theory behind that is that if I do that, if I teach 1,000 people to do exactly what Will did, or do it in their own way to meet their own goals, okay, then my money comes. Okay. I'm a true believer that if I help other people, the rest of it happens. Okay. So if you hit that thumbs up button, if you let your friends know that we're going to be doing these, I don't know how often we're going to do them, Will, but if you let your friends know and they're in there, and I can change the trajectory for 1,000 people, then my life is good. Okay. So that sounds real philosophical. Sorry to get all philosophical at this time of stress for everybody. But knowledge, people ask, where do you start in real estate? You start with knowledge. I mean, Will said he wasn't going to sell, but Will's put together a really good real estate course. I'm going to be putting together some more advanced stuff later on down the road. But with all seriousness, it starts with knowledge. If people put their requests in the comments section, if they put out there that thumbs up and invite your friends so that when we're doing this, I don't know what your goal is, Will, but like I said, my goal is to help 1,000 people. And if I can do that, I'll do this every single night if you ask me.
That's where you know you got a good realtor. See, that's the sign of a good realtor. Well, someone is willing to help other people and share their knowledge, and help everybody get ahead. So for me, everybody, just want to say thank you not only to my guests, Daniel, Quentin, Rich.
Let me know when you're gonna move to Richmond, Rich. All right. Let me know.
But I also want to thank everybody that's that joined us. I think we had about 200 and some people in here at one point in time. Now, somebody said at the beginning, was this going to be a free class with no sales pitch? So I was like, what is that? So this is obviously a free knowledge. Now, I do, for those of you that want to accelerate and learn like from my online course, I do have an online course. The reason why I created it is because people asked me to create it as a result of me making free videos on YouTube talking about how to invest in real estate. So I created the course, and now I just took 60% off the price of the course. If you want to take the course, and it's thorough, like I put my everything into it, and there's some people that have already started to take it, and they can tell you that it's legit. So I do have an online course. You can take it if you want to. If you don't want to, just stay tuned. We're going to continue to share knowledge on this channel. And that course is willmotivation.com/crisis-relief for the discount. All right. So love you guys and appreciate everybody for joining us. And hopefully we'll do this tomorrow night for those that can make it. And if not tomorrow, maybe Sunday for sure. I can do it on Sunday. So you guys make sure to turn notifications on. Thank our special guests, Quentin, Daniel, Rich.
Thanks, everybody.
Love y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Everybody be safe. Everybody be safe.
Sure, be safe. See you next time for sure.
Peace.